There's a lot of Civil War veterans that are buried here in the Christ Church Cemetery, and I will say not all of them fought for the Union. The grave that we're looking at here, William McDonald, also goes by Larry. He was a Confederate spy. Now, William, he was born to a mother from Eatontown. She was local. His father was from Quebec, but they raised him in Charleston, South Carolina. So he grew up in the South, getting to know that part of the country. He comes back up north as a young man. He opens up a successful carriage business in New York City. But when the war breaks out in 1861, his sympathies naturally fall with the South, the place that he was raised. So he decides he's going to serve the Confederacy, but in, albeit a more clandestine way. He chooses to hook up as a sutler with the 26th New Jersey Infantry. Now, the sutlers are like the walking convenience stores of their day. They would follow the armies as they move on campaign. They would sell the soldiers things like letters, paper rather, to write letters home, stationery, shoes, extra supplies and things of that nature. Also, some of the stuff they weren't supposed to have, the dice, the playing cards. But in any case, while he's working as a sutler, he's also feeding information about troop movements and other logistics to his Confederate superiors. In fact, during the Battle of Fredericksburg in 1862, the information that he provides helps the Confederacy to steal the horses of the regiment that he's attached to. Now, he is found out for this, and before he can really be prosecuted, he flees down south. While he's down south, he would have acted as sort of like an aide-de-camp to a general for a little while. He's also continuing to act as an informant. Later on, he decides to move back up to Canada. Now, in Canada at that time, it was sort of a no man's land where Confederate spy rings and saboteurs, they could operate with impunity. They were free to do so. So while he's up in Canada, he becomes involved in several plots. Among them were trying to free Confederate prisoners on the Great Lakes, which doesn't go so well. He nearly gets arrested in that case. And somewhere around 1864, we believe he becomes involved in a plot to burn New York City to the ground. And you did hear that right. We think he may have been involved in a plot to burn New York City. Now, the way this plot works, the 1864 election is coming up. War is not going so well for the South. What the Confederates figure is that if they can create enough havoc and enough chaos, they could possibly change the results of the election. Now, up for re-election in that year is Abraham Lincoln. He wants to pursue the war right to its very end. His opponent, however, George McClellan, might be more conciliatory towards the South. So this plot is supposed to go just like this. We'll have about 7 or 8 operatives. They will get different hotel rooms in New York City. They will then take what we call Greek fire. It's a chemical made out of things like phosphorus and naphtha. They'll stack up the bed sheets on the beds. They'll close the windows, lock the doors, pour the Greek fire on, and walk out of the hotels. They hoped that separate fires would break out throughout the city and cause a lot of chaos and confusion. At the same time, we believe that McDonald would have been in charge of leading a riot. Now, this riot would have been made up of Copperheads. Copperheads are Northern Democrats who are conciliatory towards the South or openly sympathetic. And so with the fires going on and the riots at the same time, they hoped to create a situation that was similar to the draft riots that had occurred in New York City just the year before in 1863. All of this chaos, ultimately, they hoped would sway the election. Now, this plan begins to fall apart almost as quickly as it begins. They did get into the hotel rooms. That went okay. They stacked up the bed sheets, they poured the Greek fire on. The problem came about when they shut the doors and they shut the windows. They inadvertently snuffed out their own fires. The riot also never materialized. Now, at this point, the New York City Fire Department is beginning to become a little bit suspicious. They think something is afoot here. Unfortunately, by that time, for the Confederate spies at least, they had already left the city on trains. They never got any of them except for one. One man was captured later on towards the end of the war and was hanged. But the rest of them, including McDonald, all escaped. Now, McDonald's story doesn't really end there. I mean, he does fade into obscurity for the rest of the war, but post-war, he actually returns here to Eatontown, where his mother was from. He becomes involved in the very non-suspicious business of selling and growing produce, and he lives out his life very quietly with his wife and children right here in the local area. And as you can see, he's now buried right here in the cemetery. His gravestone, you might note, is a little bit crooked. You could say kind of just like his loyalties.